Hello, and thank you for tuning in to watch my talk. I'm Jonathan, I'm a genealogist, and I live on the Norfolk-Suffolk border in East Anglia. If you want to know more about me, please visit my website, which you'll find at the address displayed on screen. My talk today focuses on my experiences of using Burke's landed gentry, which I hope will be useful to you in your own research. Burke's landed gentry is a social dictionary of families who were considered by its editor to belong to that group. The genealogist John Burke first published his Dictionary of the Peerage in 1826. It was followed by Burke's Commoners in 1833, containing families enjoying territorial possessions or high official rank, but uninvested with heritable honours. Burke's Commoners was re-edited in 1843, at which time it became known as Burke's Landed Gentry. The Dictionary of National Biography states that the reputations of both Burke's Peerage and Burke's Landed Gentry were somewhat marred by doubtful pedigrees and the inclusion of unpleasing facts. Nevertheless, they remain popular and continue to be published in new editions into modern times. The current chairman of Burke's Peerage says that the families included in Burke's Landed Gentry were those of historical significance within a county, landowners, and those that were entitled to display a coat of arms. The pedigrees were compiled by the editor and his team in communication with county historians and correspondence from the families themselves. Details might be cross-checked using primary and secondary sources, but in practice, much of the information received from correspondence was accepted at face value, and sources were not referenced. 19th century editions are freely available online in various places, and a 1939 edition is free to view on Family Search. The more recent editions can be viewed on the Burke's Peerage website. Because of the continuing editorial process and the natural life cycles of each family, the detail in each pedigree can vary between editions. It's important to say that I haven't undertaken to survey every East Anglian family listed in Burke's Landed Gentry, or every edition of Burke's Landed Gentry. My research focused on 12 case study families, so I'll begin with some definitions. My research period spanned from about 1760, when the eldest Victorian patriarchs were born, through to the first decades of the 20th century. The families I chose were untitled, and they were landowners entirely or mainly in Norfolk and or Suffolk, where they maintained a principal residence. 7 of the families were from Norfolk, and the remaining 5 were Suffolk families. I used mainly the 1898 9th edition of Burke's Landed Gentry, consulting other editions as necessary. The first issue I faced was locating the families in Burke's Landed Gentry. The Burkes of Cransford Hall in Suffolk acquired their estate in 1836 and were in possession of it until 1946. According to 1873 data, it was not the smallest of the estates sampled, and yet the family seem not to have had an entry in Burke's Landed Gentry. One possible reason for their exclusion may be their status as professionals. The Cransford estate was purchased by the physician George Leman Tuthill and passed to the Burkes when his daughter, Laura Maria Love Tuthill, married Thomas Burke in 1836. Thomas was a solicitor who practised in London, and he came from a Great Yarmouth family. Several close relatives, including his father, were surgeons. In the best circles, sociologist Lenore Davidoff suggests that even in the 1870s, surgeons were barred from joining gentlemen's clubs, and gives other examples of doctors and their wives being excluded from polite society. Fortunately, I found an entry for Cransford in Coppinger's Manners of Suffolk, and a genealogy of the Turner family that included the Burkes, both available on the Internet Archive. My takeaway from this example is that not all families who might seem to be landed gentry will appear in Burke's Landed Gentry. For a substitute, it may be helpful to run an internet search on the family and estate names. You could also check the Society of Genealogists catalogue for pedigrees and Howard and Crisp's Visitation of England and Wales. Where families were included in Burke's Landed Gentry, the information provided seemed to be broadly correct. It was common, however, for generations of children to be incomplete. The Upcher family is one example. Across several generations, one or more children are frequently missing from the Burke's Landed Gentry pedigree. Often the missing children died as infants or in childhood, but Augusta Elizabeth Upcher was 20 when she died in 1836. She was included in the family genealogy at the time of the 1939 edition, but those who had died in childhood were not. The Norths are another interesting example. As a junior branch of the Earls of Guildford, they were included in Burke's peerage in 1858. There, the children of Francis Frederick North and Elizabeth Whittier were recorded correctly, but with Montague, baptised in 1807, missing. He probably died before the birth of his brother Roger Montague in 1812, but I've yet to find a record of this. The Norths of Ruffham appear in the 4th edition of Burke's Landed Gentry, but here Edward Francis, baptised 1816, is recorded as 2 sons, one named Edward and one named Francis, and Montague is again missing. In the 1898 edition, Roger Montague, Arabella and Edward Francis, again as 2 individuals, are recorded as children of their own niece, Dudley's daughter Helen Margaret. Clearly this is a typesetting error in preparing the indented pedigree. The error is corrected in the 1921 edition, but there Edward Francis is omitted altogether and Montague remains missing. In these examples, the missing children seem to be those who died unmarried, usually in childhood. To a family historian seeking to understand the family in its completeness, or to a demographer interested in the full reproductive histories of each couple, these individuals are significant. Until the 1870s, many of the women in my research gave birth throughout their fertile years of marriage, approximately every 2 years. Gaps where an unrecorded birth might have occurred should therefore be easy to locate. I employed targeted searching in parish registers and worked between the birth registration indexes at FreeBMD with its flexible search parameters and the GRO's new indexes where mothers' maiden names are recorded from 1837. You could also cross-check with other pedigrees such as Howard and Crisp's Visitations. In Find My Past, I used the advanced search feature to search parish registers across a broad date range, using a combination of parents' names and a known location where the children tended to be baptised. Bear in mind, however, that baptisms may also have occurred at other family residences, including those of high-status extended family members, and in London and at resort towns, so searching with and without locations can be helpful. I used a similar strategy in Ancestry, also using the card catalogue to locate a specific set of parish registers and either searching within that collection or paging through the parish register images. Due to the status of the families concerned, associated baptisms are usually easy to notice by the use of Mr., the inclusion of the mother's maiden name if she too were from a high-status family, and reference to the family's estate. As always, beware mistranscriptions and faded, torn or blotted entries that have escaped transcription completely. The third issue I encountered concerned the identification of spouses. This was not usually an issue for the senior line of a family, but my first example does concern the senior line of the Ward family of Solhouse, Norfolk. According to Burke, Robert Ward married Lydia Rawle of Liskeard in Cornwall, with whom he had issue. Robert's funerary hatchment in the church at Solhouse, which I found photographed on Flickr, shows his arms impaled with those of 2 wives. The first is identifiable as Rawle, and parish registers confirm that Lydia Rawle predeceased Robert, dying in 1839. The second are those of Hallett. Marriage indexes and parish registers confirmed that Robert Ward of Solhouse, a widower, married Lydia Hallett, daughter of Richard Hallett, gentleman, in Exeter in 1840. Robert and Lydia's son, also Robert, was born and baptised in Solhouse in 1842, and after Robert died in 1843, Lydia and her child moved back permanently to Exeter. Neither Robert's second wife nor his son, by his second marriage, appear to have made it into Burke's Landed Gentry. In the genealogy of the Pratts of Ryston, 4th daughter Harriet is recorded as having married Reverend William Gale Townley, rector of Upwell, but no other information about him is given. The parish register records that his father was Richard Greaves Townley, Esquire. The Townleys were a landed gentry family, and therefore have their own pedigree in Burke's Landed Gentry. This includes a William Gale Townley, son of a Richard Greaves Townley, but it records his wife as Catherine Marsham, not Harriet Pratt. The parish register of marriage for William Gale Townley and Catherine Marsham records that he was a bachelor at the time of their marriage, so this cannot have been the same man marrying twice. By building the Townley family tree from parish registers over 3 generations, the problem was solved. The repetition of names and the omission of junior branches of the family from Burke's landed gentry proved to be the source of the confusion. The William Gale Townley who married Harriet Pratt was the son of Richard Greaves Townley and Margaret Gale, and does not appear in Burke's landed gentry. The William Gale Townley who married Catherine Marsham was his nephew, and, as a son in the senior line, does appear in Burke's landed gentry. Both held successively the family living of Upwell St Peter, which further adds to the potential for confusion. A final example. Burke's landed gentry records that Marianne, daughter of Thomas Cubitt of Honning Hall, Norfolk, married Reverend J. Taylor, who was rector of Hainford, Norfolk, and Diptford, Devon. No other information is given on him, apart from, in 20th century editions, a death year. The Honning Parish Register records John Taylor, Clerk of Posick in Norfolk, and the Bath Chronicle confirms that he was rector there. Due to the date of the marriage, 1810, the name of his father was not recorded. An obituary confirms that he ended his career as rector of Hainford and Diptford, as per Burke's landed gentry, and that he was perpetual curate of St Michael's at Thorne in Norwich. It also gives his patrons, including a Miss Taylor, who presented him to the Devon living, possibly a relative. As a 19th century clergyman, it is likely that John Taylor attended university. There is an entry for a John Taylor in Alumni Cantabrigienses, and he's attributed the right career and death date. The record gives him the wrong wife, however, and therefore the information about his birth and parentage may not be correct. It looks like this record is an amalgamation of 2 John Taylors. Another newspaper announcement solves the puzzle. This marriage announcement confirms that the John Taylor who became rector of Posick and married Marianne Cubitt had attended Oxford University. And the Alumni Oxonienses record gives the name of his father's seat, and suggests his year of birth. It was then possible to find the appropriate baptism record on Find My Past in the parish register of Totnes in Devon. A history of the manor of Totnes recorded that a Miss Taylor, daughter of George Taylor, was lady of the manor in 1822. More work in parish registers revealed George Taylor to be John's elder brother. He died in 1813 after the birth of his daughter Catherine in 1807. Apparently she was the Miss Taylor who presented her uncle, Reverend John Taylor, to the living of Diptford in 1828. In these 3 examples, identification was possible with perseverance and supplemental research, as I've demonstrated. So, in summary, Burke's landed gentry can be a very useful starting point for research into a family, providing a genealogy over several generations, especially as it is so accessible online. Generally, I found the pedigrees to be reliable. The examples I've shown you from my research, which was not comprehensive and can only be considered anecdotal, have demonstrated some of the issues I encountered and how I worked around them. That's the end of my talk. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments below. And if you'd like to know more about me or the work I do, please get in touch via my website.